Hello everyone, welcome to episode 10 of the Dharma series. And today our topic of discussion is Sannyasa stage of a man's life. In this stage, the man waited for liberation after fulfilling all his duties, and that is called the stage of sannyas or the final stage of ashram. If you have not gone through the previous videos, please go through it so that you can understand this video in a much better way. So let's begin with our video on sannyasa or the stage of liberation in the Āśrama theory of the Vedic age. Introduction to Sannyasa and ascetic traditions. So what is Sannyasa and how does it help in understanding the ascetics traditions of the Vedic period? Here we will go through the topics we will discuss in detail in this presentation. So, concept of sannyas. The presentation explores sannyasa, the final stage of life in ancient Indian tradition, focused on renunciation, celibacy, and detachment from worldly ties. So, the focus of this presentation is the stage of sannyas, which is the final stage of life in ancient Indian culture or in the Vedic culture. Now, this stage was all about renunciation. Renunciation means letting go of everything. It concerned itself with celibacy, means no kind of familial attachment, and also a sannyas will have to be detached from all kinds of worldly ties, means letting go of all the materialistic things in one's life. Monastic order. It covers the system of mathas established after Śaṅkarācārya. So Śaṅkarācārya was the person who helped to establish mathas in different parts of India. Their initiation formulae means how one got initiated into the life of a sannyasa. Surnames of ascetics means what are the names they took up as an ascetic, and the rules of renunciation. So these are the things which we will discuss on the context of monastic orders in the Indian subcontinent, which was mainly founded by Śaṅkarācārya. Texts like Rājataraṅgiṇī, Mahābhārata, Mitakshara, and inscriptions record women ascetics, saṃnyāsinīs, are the women ascetics, and they have been mentioned in texts like Rājataraṅgiṇī, Mahābhārata, and Mitakshara, and their social, philosophical, and religious contributions have been highlighted. So the phase of sannyas was not at all limited to male members only. Everyone could go through the stage of ascetic or the final stage of ashram, that is sannyas. And it has been mentioned in ancient texts like Rājataraṅgiṇī, Mahābhārata, and Mitakshara that the saṃnyāsinīs or the women ascetics played an important role in the going forward of social, philosophical, and religious part of one's life. Rules and duties. Detailed regulations for ascetics are described in texts like Manusmriti and the Mahābhārata, prescribing conduct, food habits, celibacy, silence, yoga, and austerities. So, all these things, the detailed duties and code of conduct have been mentioned in text like Manusmriti, Mahabharata, and what do they mention? They mention the conduct, food habits which you are supposed to take up as a sannyasi, the rules of celibacy, silence, yoga, and what kind of austerities one should go through while being in the sannyasa stage. All these things have been mentioned. Classifications. The four classes of bhikshus, kuchika, Kuchikaka, Bahudaka, Hamsa, and Paramahamsa are explained showing stages of spiritual progress. So different stages of spiritual progress have been mentioned, which show the spiritual capacities of one's soul, and thus four classes of bhikshus have been explained in this sannyasa tradition. Critical perspectives. The presentation also discusses pseudo ascetics, criticisms in ancient literature, and balance between true renunciation and false appearances. So, what is true renunciation and what is show off? All the things have been explained in the ancient texts. It also criticizes the role of sannyasi sometimes, and also in ancient literature we can see the classification of a real sannyasa from that of a fake one. Comprehensive study. Together, the slides stress the historical, literary, philosophical, and epigraphic evidence of ascetic life with equal focus on both male and female ascetics. So, equal focus have been given in this presentation on male and female ascetics. Now we will see in detail about the sannyas stage, or the fourth and final stage of ashramic life, and the monastic orders, means the organizations which help you to attain the stage of sannyas. Meaning of sannyas. Sannyas was the stage of a man's life where he could adopt renunciation. Renunciation means letting go of all the materialistic attachment in one's life. So often skipping the other two ashramas, Vanaprastha and Grihastha, it became customary after Śaṅkarācārya. So sometimes a person could become a sannyas directly from brahmacharya. So from brahmacharya, from studenthood, one could renounce everything and become a sannyas, directly skipping the two ashramas in the middle. However, this stage of sannyas, or the attainment of sannyas, became customary after Shankaracharya. Orders and surnames. Shankara divided his followers into 10 orders with surnames like Tirtha Giri Ashrama. So these are the surnames according to which the followers of Shankar have been divided. He is the one who organized the sannyas, or the monastic lifestyle. Monasteries. One of the 10, Tirtha and Ashrama, were under Sarada Matha. So Sarada Matha had the Tirtha and the Ashram, the at Dwarka. So these two surnames came under the Sharada Math at Dwarka. Van and Aranya under Jyotir Math at Vadari. So Vadari had another math, which is the Jyotir Math. It contained the surnames Van and Aranya. Bharati and Puri under Sringeri, which is ancient Sringapura. So these two surnames were under the math at Sringeri. Travasthi and Parvata under Govardhan Math at Puri. So that is how different surnames were divided among the mathas, and the headquarters of each math were was in the different places of India. Sharada Matha was associated with Prakasha, Jyotirmath with Ananda, Govardhana Math with Swarfa, and Sringeri Math with Ananda. So different kinds of philosophies were associated with different maths. Initiation formula. Each math initiated monks with special Mahābhākyas. Sharada Math with Prajnanam Brahma, Jyotirmath with Ayam Atma Brahma, Govardhana Math with Tat Tavam Asi, Sringeri Math with Aham Brahmasmi. So these were the special Mahavakyas with which a sannyasi attained the lifestyle of sannyasi. So attained the lifestyle or became incorporated into the monastic order. So there were separate Mahābhāratas reserved for separate mats through which the sannyasi attained the or the sannyasi became incorporated into the monastic order. So that was the initiation formula. Code of renunciation. According to Yajnavalkya in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the sannyasi must renounce wife, family, and property while leaving home. So a sannyasi must renounce all the attachments, including wife, family, and property, and then leave home in and become initiated under a monastic order to become a sannyasi. Monastic practices and women ascetics. So what were the main monastic practices and how did the women ascetics lead their life? Rājataraṅgiṇī evidence. Kalhaṇa mentions Yuka Devi, queen of Kashmir, who built a monastery. So according to the Rājataraṅgiṇī written by Kalhaṇa, we get mention of a person named Yoka Devi who was queen of Kashmir, and she helped to build a monastery. She prepared bhikshus following proper precepts or shikshakara. So she separated the bhikshus with the help of proper codes from those with wives, children, and property. So a shikshakara, or the method through which a bhikshu was separated, was very much strict, and it separated the bhikshus from the wives, children, and property. Kalhana's disapproval. Kalhana disapproved of married monks, though Yuka Devi did not. So Kalhana strictly prohibited monkhood for married people, but Yuka Devi did not do any such thing. Evidence of an abbot's son shows monastery heads were sometimes married men. So, sometimes, according to a few Gujarati inscriptions, we get evidences of an abbot's son. So, abbot's son means the abbot was married. So, we get evidences of married monks. Different types of monasteries existed. So there were different types of monasteries, and everyone did not follow the same philosophy. Woman ascetics. The Mritakshara on Yajnavalkya cites Bodhayana that women could also adopt ascetic life as saṃnyāsinīs. So according to Yajnavalkya, as has been written in Mritakshar, it has been stated that women could also adopt the sannyasini lifestyle. So sannyasinis are the woman ascetics. Patanjali's mention in Mahabhashya. Patanjali records a woman ascetic, parivrājika, named Śaṅkara. So Śaṅkara was a woman ascetic according to what has been stated in Mahabhashya by Patanjali, and she has been described as a parivrājika, which is the feminine version of parivrajak. Kautilya's rules. Arthaśāstra imposed fines 24 panas for adultery with a pravarajita. So if someone gets involved with adultery with a sannyasi, then there will be 24 panas fine. 12 panas for ravishing a prostitute. So these are the separate contexts of crimes where it has been stated that preservation of the spirituality of a woman ascetic is very important, and severe punishment for intercourse with a brahmana woman. So there were severe punishments reserved for the crimes of adulteries, and according to the intensity of crime, there were separate punishments reserved. Reputation of female ascetics. So, how were the female ascetics? What was their reputation? Dominance of Buddhist and Jaina ascetics. In Kautilya's times, most female ascetics were Buddhists or Jainas. He held poor opinions of them. So, according to Arthaśāstra, Kautilya does not give much respect to the woman ascetics of his time. The most women ascetics during the time of the Mauryan period or during the time of Kautilya were the Buddhists or Jainas. Non-Brahmanical ascetics were barred from countryside settlement. So ascetics who were not Brahmins, they did not have the permission to stay within the society. A fine of 100 panas was imposed for feeding shakyas. So if anyone fed those ascetics, then there will be a fine of 100 panas for feeding the Shakyas. Shakyas means Buddhists, Ajivikas, and heretical monks. So these were separate sects of Buddhism who practiced the monastic lifestyle, and it was strictly prohibited for any commoner to help them by feeding them. Vātsyāyana's Kāmasūtra, written 200 years later, forbade intercourse with parivrājikās. Vātsyāyana's works show reputation of ascetic women as low. So according to Vātsyāyana, the ascetic women were not of a great character, so their reputation was very low according to what has been written in Kamasutra, which came 200 years after the Mauryan times. Vatsyayana advised women to avoid vikshukis, sramanas, kashapanas. The term Vikshuki was doubtful, sometimes meaning Buddhist nun, Jaina nun, or harlot. So Vatsyayana strictly advised the woman to stay away from all kinds of woman ascetics of the time. However, it is not confirmed whether Vatsyayana told the people to stay away from a Buddhist nun, Jaina nun, or harlot. Vikshuki was explained as wife of a Vikshuka. So according to different kinds of definition, sometimes Vikshuki was just a term reserved for the wife of a Vikshuk, beggar's wife. Goni Kaputra. Goni Kaputra has been stated in Kamasutra. S- He said that Vikshukis, Kashapanikas, Tapashis were used as prostitutes. So this is a degradation in the reputation of the female ascetics, as has been stated in Kama Sutra. Vikshuki could mean Buddhist nun, while Tapasi was a female ascetic of Brahmanical sect. So Vikshukis were Buddhist nuns and Tapasi were female ascetics of the Brahmanical sect. Vikshukis acted as go-betweens in love affairs. So the reputation of the woman ascetics, especially the woman ascetics from Buddhism and Jainism, was very low in the ancient times. They were not at all viewed with proper respect. Female ascetics in epics and literature. So, what was the reputation of the female ascetics according to Ramayana and Mahābhārata? So, references in Ramayana mentions a Vikshuni who had the ability to predict her future. So, in Ramayana, there is evidence of a woman ascetics who was also a seer, who could also see one's future. Mahabharata example is also there, where we get the story of Princess Ambā, who under peculiar circumstances renounced worldly life and became an ascetic. So we get evidence of a Princess Ambā and Princess Ambā because of certain controversial reasons with the Swayamvar in which she participated. She did not like the husband getting defeated by Bhishma, and so she wanted to marry Bhishma, and after that she left everything and became an ascetic. So in Mahābhārata also we get examples of ascetic lifestyle. Another prominent case was Sulabhā, regarded as one of the most erudite women of ancient age, remembered for preaching her own brand of Sankhya philosophy. So this is another example of a woman ascetic whose name was Sulabhā, and she was one of the most accomplished women of ancient age. She had her own philosophy of Sankhya. Status of women. The Mahabharata declared that even persons of lowest varna or woman could achieve the highest goal through yoga. So Mahabharata and Ramayana, in the epics we get huge respect reserved for women ascetics, and the Mahabharata declared that even people who are belonging from the lowest varna could achieve their ascetic goal or could achieve their spiritual goal through the practice of yoga. Manu stated that even a brahmacharin must learn virtuous action from a woman or even from a shudra. So according to Manu Smriti, a brahmacharin means a student, a sincere student could sometimes learn a great deal of spiritual spiritual progress from a woman or from even a shudra. In the Malavika Agnimitra, Kaushiki is described as wearing ascetic garb, Yati Vesha, addressed as Parivrājika. So in Malavika Agnimitra, we get the character of Kaushiki, who is wearing the robe of an ascetic, and thus she has been addressed to as a parivrājika. So even though women ascetics were not at all viewed with respect in earlier times, we get the evidence of Ramayana and Mahabharata where we get just the opposite view. Women were given huge respect, especially the women ascetics were respected a lot in the society. Woman ascetics and epigraphic evidence. So, according to different inscriptions, what was the position of the woman ascetics? Bana mentions an ascetic widow, Chakravakika, in his list of motley friends. So, according to Banavata, there is an woman ascetic widow whose name was Chakravakika, and she was a friend of Banavata. Abu inscription records the activities of superior of Saiba monastery, Kedara Rashi. So Kedara Rashi was the head of a Shaiva monastery. His spiritual genealogy included Yogesvarī, a woman ascetic described as Tapaswini Vajayini. So Tapaswini Vajayini is the term given to Yogesvarī, who resided in the Shaiva monastery, and the head of Shaiva monastery was Kedara Rashi. So from here we get an understanding. From the Abu inscription we get to know that there was prominence and respect towards women ascetics. Especially we get the names of ascetics named Yogeshwari. Mokṣesvarī's contribution. Kedararashi's sister Mokṣesvarī built a Shaiva temple and is described as Brahmacharya Parayana, showing she was either a sannyāsinī or preparing to become one. So we get further instances of women in monastic lifestyle where we get to understand that there was an woman ascetic called Mokṣesvarī who was the sister of Kedara Rishi, and she built a Shiva temple, and as she has been described as either a sannyasini or a person who was preparing to become a sannyasini. Female asceticism. These examples reveal active female participation in ascetic traditions across epic, literary, and inscriptional sources. So, from all these sources, we get to understand that there was active female participation in monastic order. The recognition of women like Sulabhā, Yogesvarī, and Mokṣesvarī indicates the acknowledgement of female ascetics in both Hindu philosophical and religious contexts. So, both in philosophical and religious contexts, women ascetics were very much recognized and accepted socially by giving them huge respect. Evidence shows that female ascetics were not just rare exceptions but had recognized place across centuries. So, female ascetics were not just exceptions, they were not just unusual things, they were very much recognized across centuries. Rules and duties of a sannyasin. So, what were the disciplinary practices and code of conducts reserved for the sannyasi lifestyle? Initiation rite. A man had to perform a sacrifice to Prajapati before becoming a sannyasi. Other rites were prescribed in different texts. So, a man had to perform a ritualistic sacrifice towards Prajapati, and thus he could become a sannyasi. There are different other rites which have been prescribed in different sources. Renunciation of possessions. He had to give up family, property, retain only tattered garments, water jar, and a begging bowl. So he had to leave everything. He had to let go of all his materialistic attachments, including family, and then with bare minimum like tattered garments, water jar, and begging bowl, he had to get out into the wild and wait for liberation. He has to become homeless, dwelling outside villages, staying under trees or in uninhabited houses, moving from place to place during rainy season. So a sannyasi did not have any settled life. So he has to be homeless, and he will be dwelling outside villages, surviving under trees or in uninhabited houses or in places where no one stays, and thus he had to live a nomadic lifestyle by moving from place to place. Only during rainy season he could stay in the monasteries. He should wander alone, live in strict celibacy, detached from worldly objects, and seek spiritual knowledge. So, strict celibacy was very much important part of the life of a sannyasi. There should not be any companion to a sannyasi lifestyle, and the only goal of a sannyasi should be to seek spiritual knowledge. A sannyasi must not injure creatures, remain calm under insult, bless even malefactors, and avoid anger. So, a sannyasi should not lose his temper at any point of time. So, a sannyasi should not injure any creature, he should remain calm under insult, and he could not curse anyone. He would had to bless even the person who tried to harm him, and avoid danger at all costs. Dependence on alms. He should not kindle fire but live on food received as alms. So a sannyasi could not cook. So lighting a fire for cooking was not allowed. A sannyasi would have to survive on the alms which he received by begging. Later rules forbade begging under Kalivarja. So under Kalivarja, later rules state that even begging was prohibited. So a sannyasi would have to leave everything and fast until death. He ate only enough to sustain life, remained content with little, wore minimum tattered garments, preferably ochre colored. So everything was very minimum and basic in the life of a sannyasi. Further rules and classification of ascetics. What were the more rules prescribed for the ascetic lifestyle? Metal vessels were forbidden. Bowls had to be of clay, wood, or gourd shell. So metals were not to be used by a sannyasi. It would have to be biodegradable and natural. Nails were to be pa- pared, hairs and beard removed. Sleeping was on bare ground. So these were the strict disciplinary rules which the monks had to follow. Illness should not deter him. He must neither crave life nor welcome death. So one should not be affected with illness because life or death doesn't matter. Awaiting the end like a servant awaiting orders. So he should let go of every wellness, every kind of aims and aspirations, and simply wait for death like a servant waiting for orders. Silence was to be observed except for reciting Vedic texts. He carried the three danda, symbolizing control over body, speech, and mind. So, three danda uh, is a thing which the sannyasi carried, and each of these dandas symbolized control over what? Over body, speech, and mind. So silence and self control was the paramount achievement of a sannyasi. Purification of mind was through pranayama and other yogic practices. So one should purify his mind through the practice of pranayam and other yogas. The Mahābhārata list Kutikaka, Bahudhaka, Hamsa, and Paramahamsa in order of spiritual excellence. So these were different levels of ascetic lifestyle as has been stated in Mahābhārata. Kutikaka lived in huts dependent on sons. So Kutikaka were the sannyasis who lived in huts and depended on the sons. Bahudhaka or ochre robes begged food. So Bahudhaka were the sannyasi who wore robes in ochre color and begged for food. Hamsa practiced severe penance. So severe austerities were followed by the Hamsas, and Paramahamsa renounced all, lived under trees, caves, or cremation grounds. Paramahamsa was the highest level of sannyasi where one had to renounce everything, live under trees or cremation grounds. The Mahabharata warns against false ascetics who shaved heads or robes but pursued wealth and pleasure. So pseudo ascetics have also been described in Mahabharata who did not have any spiritual goal. Their only goal was to cheat people and get wealth and pleasure. Now we will go through the sources through which we got all of these information. You can read all these sources if you want to know more, and also these sources will help you to verify whatever I have said in this presentation. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, reference to Yajnavalkya renunciation and rules of sannyas. Dharmasūtras and Smṛtis, Bodhayana, Manusmriti, and Mitakshara on Yajnavalkya, prescribing duties, rules, and female asceticism. Mahābhārata, mentions of Ambā, Sulabhā, classifications of ascetics, criticisms of pseudo-ascetics. Ramayana, reference to a Vikshini who predicted her future. Kalidas, Malavika Agnimitra, description of Kaushiki as parivrājika. Vana mentions ascetics widow Chakravakika. Rājataraṅgiṇī by Kalhaṇa mentions Yokadevi monastery in Kashmir, distinction between married and celibate monks. Inscriptions Abu dated to 1207 to 1208 AD records Yogesvarī and Mokṣesvarī women ascetics linked to Shaiva traditions. Kautilya's Arthaśāstra states the fines and legal rules concerning female ascetics. Vātsyāyana's Kāmasūtra views on parivrājikās, vikshukis, and the reputation of women ascetics. Secondary sources are also there, like concise history of ancient India, compilation of evidence, and scholarly analysis. So these are the sources from which I got most of the information. So that was all about the sannyasi lifestyle. With this, we end our videos on the ashramas. I have published total of 5 videos on ashrama. The first video was a general introduction to the ashrama lifestyle. After that, we have gone through each of the stages starting from brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and ultimately this video on sannyasi. Hope you have liked it. These videos are not very visually entertaining, but I can guarantee you you will not find uh, you will not find more researched uh, topics in ancient history like I do in YouTube or open source media. So please go through it, and with your support, I hope to bring brighter contents in future. Thank you so much for your love and patience.